What is a cash flow ninja?
A cash flow ninja is someone that in the verticals of business and investing pursues excellence daily and is a lifelong learner and student of business and investing.
Why are you different from that? And what do you get out of pursuing cash flow?
If you're listening to this as a listener, let me ask you a question because I truly believe that the quality of the questions that we ask ourselves determines the quality of our lives, right? And that's questions are sometimes more important than the answers. So if you have a strategy or a plan, when would you want to know whether it works or not? And, I look at that and I go, probably as quick as possible.
That's it. What advice would you give Americans who maybe don't have the international perspective that you have?
One of the biggest threats right now that a lot of people might not even know of because they don't think about it is taxes. So that would be my advice for people living through this: is control what you can. Take unknown variables that could come and bite you off the table. Like, for example, in the wealth building and investing space, taxes is a very big variable. Inflation, it's cooked into this system. It's only going to get worse. So instead of being a victim of inflation, figure out how you can be on the right side of it and actually benefit from it.
This is the Money Seed Podcast, where we discuss all things investing, plain and simple, the way it should be. Please remember, this show is for educational and entertainment purposes only and is not intended to be investment advice. Welcome back to the Money Seed Podcast. My guest today is MC Laubscher. MC is an entrepreneur, an author, a podcast host, and an all-around expert on alternative wealth strategies and investing. MC, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I've been looking forward to our conversation.
MC, you are known as the Cash Flow Ninja. You own and run the website cashflowninja.com. You're also the founder of Producers Wealth. Tell us, what is a cash flow ninja?
Yeah, so I had a little bit of fun coming up with that name, Cash Flow Ninja, and I actually come from a martial arts family, a military and a martial arts family in South Africa. So my dad is a very well-known practitioner of traditional karate and travels the world. So what I took from how he lives his life and still does up to today, I mean, he's 76 and still kicking, is every day he gets up and he tries to get just a little bit better in his craft. So it's a pursuit of excellence in his entire life, but he does it in increments every single day. So he just gets up every single day, tries to get better because he'll never arrive in full mastery of that craft. I kind of look at business and investing the same way. We're never going to reach a point where we go, that's it. I've done it. I know it now. It's all good. I know everything there is to know, right? So you've got to be a lifelong learner and a student of those two things, of business and investing. So I've taken that approach to those two verticals, and I just try to get better at business, better at investing every single day, and I pursued excellence in both of those two crafts. Now, where the cash flow comes in is I realized how important cash flow is in both business and investing. Cash flow in business, I mean, you could have the best product or service on the planet, and it could be selling like hotcakes, and you could go out of business because you didn't manage cash flow correctly and properly. And the same thing with investing. Investing when there's no cash flow in certain investments that pays you to hold them, gives you great tax benefits, and you get to leverage other people's skill sets, capabilities, networks, and capital. Well, it could be very, very, very tough as an investor. I mean, how many investments can you invest in that's never going to pay you, right? Before you kind of run out of money. So cash flow became a central theme. And it's played a big part in my life for the past 24 years. So a cash flow ninja is someone that in the verticals of business and investing pursues excellence daily and is a lifelong learner and student of business and investing.
So let me take it a step backwards. Why cash flow? I mean, what's wrong with the idea of just getting a well-paying job, maximize my 401ks. What's wrong with that? That's traditional financial advice. Millions of people receive that advice daily. Why are you different from that? And what do you get out of pursuing cash flow?
If you're listening to this as a listener, let me ask you a question, because I truly believe that the quality of the questions that we ask ourselves determines the quality of our lives, right? And that's questions are sometimes more important than the answers. So if you have a strategy or a plan, when would you want to know whether it works or not? And, I look at that and I go, probably as quick as possible.
That's it. Yeah.
If I launch a marketing campaign in my business, when do I want to know whether that's going to work or not? Like right now, I want to find out as quickly as possible. The same when it comes to money. If you have a strategy and you have a plan, when do you want to know if this doesn't work? Well, I don't want to wait 30 to 40 years to figure that out, because at that time it's too late. So with cash flow, investing for cash flow in businesses and other investment vehicles, there's many of them. I've studied over 100 of them. Right away. What, does it provide income and cash flow or not? Does it provide great tax benefits? Well, I'm going to figure that out probably in the first 12 months when I file my income tax return. And then also, what other things does it bring to the table? Is there a potential for it to increase in value, the investment or the business, with proper management and operations? Do I get to leverage other people's skill set and capabilities and their unique talents? Do I get to leverage other people's networks and capital? So yeah, that's why I love the cash flow investing aspect of it. I learned that lesson early on, and sometimes sometimes you actually don't want to have success immediately. But my first investment was in 2001. I bought a piece of real estate. I put some tenants in it. They're renting it out. I collected the rent. I paid all the bills and the expenses associated with it, and there was money left over at the end of the month. So I found out within 30 days whether that was going to work or not. And then I'm like, okay, how many times can I do this? How many of these properties can I buy? And how quickly can I scale? I prefer to figure these things out quickly rather than wait, 10, 20, 30, 40 years before I know whether my strategy worked or not.
Yeah, and that's one of the reasons why I love real estate, is because you're owning an asset that's going to appreciate over time. At the same time, you are getting cash flow every month. And like you said, it's a pretty quick proof of concept, right? You don't have to wait years and years for some investment to mature, or some company to go public. I mean, you're going to get feedback on that strategy fairly quickly.
Yeah.
And I think real estate has a lot of tax advantages as well. I think more Americans in America became wealthy and financially independent through real estate than just about any other method. So that's one of the reasons why I love real estate. A lot of my guests are real estate or real estate adjacent. But I guess when you were growing up, most people have an idea of a career. Most people don't grow up saying, I want to be a cash flow ninja. How did you find this path, and how did you get on this entrepreneur slash cash flow path?
Yeah, it's a great question. So I grew up in South Africa during a very interesting time during the country's history. A lot of unknowns, a lot of uncertainty. You didn't know what tomorrow was going to look like or what next week's going to look like. Little did I find out years later that was actually a gift, because that really helped me as an investor to live through that time period of uncertainty, turbulence, a little bit chaos, people freaking out, quite frankly. A very, very politically, I would say, fractured society, something that you're seeing all over in the West right now, by the way. I can't believe it. I'm seeing twice in my one lifetime. Um, and then went to university. I studied history and economics. Love both of those classes. And then I got a rugby scholarship playing rugby in South Africa. So at university, so I played it at high school. When I graduated, I traveled a bit, and I ended up playing playing in a league in the United States up until 2007. So when I pursued my career in athletics, people can get into bad habits, playing video games, all that kind of stuff. I read, and I came across Rich Dad Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki in 2001 right away. And it was a completely different way of looking at the world. And it was a completely different option. And my mom actually gave me the book, because at that time, they had a financial advisor that lost most of their money. And here they were. They have kids that just basically are out of the house, out of college, just finished college, and they basically almost lost everything and they have to restart again. So my mom gave me the book and said, you got to look at a different path because obviously this hasn't been working for us. And that kind of like the purple book moment is all I needed. And I took action. And then I just used all of the money that I was making in my career, in sports. And I started to just invest and build something to come back to when I was done playing sports. So that's kind of the step that I took. As I mentioned, I bought my first property 6 months after reading Rich Dad Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki. I took action. I had immediate success, which could be a curse for a lot of folks because then school started and then the lessons started and there were many, many pitfalls, but you keep going, you keep learning, you keep figuring these things out. And eventually, with persistence, I think it was the athlete mentality. Sometimes I don't know, if that's sometimes a good or a bad thing, but I kept persevering. And that led to, 24 years as an investor, which has been a great journey to be on.
Yeah, so many things to touch on there. I'm amazed at how many guests I have who say they were influenced by Rich Dad Poor Dad.
Yep.
That's one of those foundational books I think every human being needs to read. But getting back to what you were talking about, growing up in South Africa, there was turbulence, there were, uncertainty. And right now, I think the West in general, but America in particular, is looking at some interesting changes coming down the pipeline. Whether it's taxes, whether it's government structure, whether it's, personal freedoms or whatever. What advice would you give Americans who maybe don't have the international perspective that you have?
Yeah, so the things that you can control, focus on those things. So I can control myself, my mindset, my skill sets, my capabilities. I can control what happens in my house with my family. I can control what's happening in my business, what culture's in my business, and how we approach things. And I can control, for the most part, what's happening in investments that I'm directly involved with. I cannot control anything that's happening on Wall Street. I cannot control anything that's happening in governments. So, one of the biggest threats right now that a lot of people might not even know of because they don't think about it is taxes. It was interesting to see this election cycle in the United States. It feels like every year's an election cycle, but it was interesting to observe because one of the things that no candidate spoke about at all were actually the two most important things that they should be speaking about. And that is the fiscal situation and the financial state of the United States. And it's not just the United States, it's the world, right? That is a massive, massive issue, which should have been the number one thing to talk about because that has implications for every single person living. Think about inflation where we're at right now. There's an AI algorithm that scraped the internet and the web that came up with a very accurate inflation number compounded since 2020, and it's around 25, 26%, which that makes sense because all the other numbers you're getting is doctored, right? Another thing
Correct.
I can share from my experience in South Africa. Governments will cook the numbers and the books to whatever they want the people to believe. But the reality is people know that there's a disconnect between what they're being told and then what they're experiencing. Just go grocery shopping. You'll figure out pretty quickly that inflation's not 3%, but more 25 to 26%. Yeah. So that's big. The debt issue is very big. And then it falls into taxes because governments can only print more money or raise taxes. That's the solutions that they have. So for every single person that's trying to build wealth for themselves and their family, and if you're an investor, that's your number one threat moving forward. So I see in the family office space where I have a lot of connections and friendships that's the number one thing that people are focusing on. Take that unknown variable off the table. Let's position capital through legal, tax, and insurance structures so we don't have to worry about paying taxes 5, 10, 15, 20 years from now. We pay them right now. We pay everything that we legally own. There's no hacks or tax loopholes or any of that kind of stuff. It's just playing by the tax code, but figuring out how to pay taxes now and not deferring it later. So that will be my advice to people living through this: is control what you can. Take unknown variables that could come and bite you off the table, like, for example, in the wealth building and investing space, taxes is a very big variable. Inflation, it's cooked into this system. It's only going to get worse. So instead of being a victim of inflation, figure out how you can be on the right side of it and actually benefit from it.
Yeah, and you mentioned both inflation as well as um, the unemployment rate. These are two things that the governments and politicians always understate, right? They have an incentive to lie to you because, hey, look, I'm doing a great job. Unemployment's low, inflation's low. So they have a personal reason to cook the numbers, and the government doesn't want to index Social Security to inflation, so they want to understate inflation as well. So there's a financial incentive. So these numbers are typically much higher than what they tell you on TV. And you also mentioned the word deferring taxes. Um, you being from South Africa, I think you said you also visited Canada quite a bit. Um, Taxes in the West are typically higher than what they are in America. Is that one of your investing theses going forward? Is that tax rates are probably going to increase in America rather than stay flat or go down?
Absolutely. So my investment thesis, as you're saying, inflation is just going to get worse. It is the entire system is structured that way. If you just look at where we have gone since 1913, the Federal Reserve was brought into the United States to where we're at now with the U.S. dollar, just the value of it, what it can buy. It's baked into the cake. So is taxes. Taxes will go up. There's no both sides politically in the United States are behind this. It isn't just one, but yeah, taxes will go up. And relatively speaking, taxes have been very low for a long time in the United States. People will probably roll their eyes listening to this, but if you look at the history of taxations in the United States, here's a fun fact. Ronald Reagan, the actor, at one stage was only making 2 movies a year. He didn't make a third one because the third one, that tax rate that one would be taxed at was almost 90%. So, so if you think about marginal tax rates and tax brackets, yeah, I mean, relatively speaking, it's very, very low, and it looks like we're going into another great war. That's another thing that's in my investment thesis, and that's going to lead to more money printing, more inflation, and higher taxes, as it's always been.
So let's continue on the path of, like, if inflation continues to be high and it'll stay high consistently, maybe even increase as you suggested. You said you studied economics and history. The current financial system we have has been in place for about 50 years or so, since we went off the gold standard in the early 70s. Where do you think that's going? How should people position their assets going forward?
Yeah. So if you think about a strategy, there's a lot of things at play here. So yes, inflation's going to be one thing, but what you're also going to experience is there's going to be a lot of demand destroying events. Now, what's a demand destroying event? COVID would be one of them. That was a demand destroying event. We had oil go negative. I mean, it was kind of crazy now that I think about it, saying these things out loud, right? It's kind of crazy. But you're going to have demand destroying events because we're living in such a volatile world. So you got to mentally prepare for anything and everything, and your portfolio has to reflect that. So, besides the fact that my thesis is based on there's going to be inflation, there's going to be higher taxes, and there's going to be wild cards, black swans, and I also call them white rhinos or gray rhinos, being from South Africa, because you can hear them coming, you could feel them coming, you could see them coming. And if you've ever been on safari and seen a rhino come towards you, you know it's coming. So there's going to be a lot of these events. So your portfolio has to reflect that. So cash is going to be very important part of this portfolio because investors are going to have incredible opportunities, right? That's the flip side to these things. When you have wild events happening like oil going to negative, well, guess what? There's a lot of people that got in and bought up a whole bunch of oil trades and rode that all the way to the upside and profited really, really well when that happened. So cash is a very big part of it. And people might think, well, you just mentioned inflation and taxes. Yes, you need cash. The other thing is some precious metals, which is obviously your insurance. I look at it as wealth insurance. That's going to be very, very important. And then you're going to need some investments, business and cash flow investments that Yeah, produces income, and then also provides all, puts you and your portfolio on the right side of inflation. So the income will increase as inflation goes up. It'll reduce your taxes. It'll also provide some opportunities of significant upside potential that these investments have. So you have to have all of it, but protect all of these with legal, tax, and insurance structures. They are available. They're, it's the same thing as the tax code. You have all these legal, tax, and insurance structures that's there used by the ultra wealthy. Use them. It's there. And I think that's going to be very, very important too, because without those, your assets and your portfolio will be at risk.
MC, tell us about your book. I believe it's called Get Wealthy for Sure. I think it reached #1 in 2 different categories on Amazon. Tell us all about it.
Yeah, so Get Wealthy for Sure is the #1 financial strategy for business owners to multiply wealth predictably. And as you mentioned, I've been very honored that it's been featured as a #1 bestseller in 2 categories on Amazon. But in the book, I talk about the #1 financial strategy for business owners, which I include investors. And you should run your investment portfolio as a business. And in the book, I talk about strategies that provide certainty, security, and also clarity in times of craziness. So there are still things that you can do today that provide, great certain levels of certainty within your portfolio to capitalize on opportunities. So the book, I also share what the ultra wealthy are doing. So a lot of people ask, well, what are they doing? I tell you what they're doing. And the big part of it is where they warehouse cash so that they can access cash, have guaranteed access to it to invest and grow and scale their operating businesses, as well as capitalize on investment opportunities. So I share, for example, what the Rockefellers do, and infinite banking is a very, very big part of it. And in the book, I also share a system that you can implement and execute on, that you could set up as a business owner and as an investor to build wealth predictably and multiply wealth predictably, even in the times that we live in today.
Yeah, it's amazing. I'm in my mid-40s now, and I've never heard of infinite banking until about 2 years ago when one of my guests on this show told me. Since then, I've had about 5 or 6 guests come on the show and tell us about infinite banking, and I looked into it, and it made a lot of sense to me. I opened up policy for myself and one for each of my 2 kids. It's a fantastic vehicle. I encourage everyone to check it out. Um, and tell us more about the website that you have, cashflowninja.com. It's an amazing website. I believe you have over 7 million downloads so far. You have your various podcasts, your shows, your downloadable guides. It seems like a great resource.
Yeah, so at cashflowninja.com, I've since 2016 interviewed the best minds in business and investing, and we have covered over 100 different cash flow niches, different investment opportunities. And the goal is just to learn more about it, what it is, why investors would invest in it, what the ecosystem looks like, and then how investors can generate income or grow capital. And then also, I always include, well, how do you lose money in these investments? Because of course, that's the other side, right? And in sharing that, you can figure out how to protect yourself, and then the positive and the negatives. But we've covered so many different cash flow niches and investment opportunities there. So I actually put it together in 4 books so people can download. There's over 100 cash flow niches that they can learn from for free at cashflowninja.com. So there's 4 books, the PDFs and the audio books if they're interested to learn more about that.
Amazing. I'll put those links into the show notes. MC, where can people reach out to you if they want to contact you?
Yeah, so they could go to producerswealth.com/money seed. So what I'll do for your listeners is my new book, Get Wealthy for Sure, the #1 financial strategy for business owners to multiply wealth predictably. I'm giving away a paperback copy. So just pay for shipping. So they can go to producerswealth.com/money seed and they can request a paperback copy of the book and just pay for shipping, and we will ship it to them. There's also some other things that I put on there. We do a presentation of infinite banking, which I've been doing for 15 years personally. Learned about that as a real estate investor. And there's also some other very interesting things that I think they would appreciate there. But that's producerswealth.com/money seed.
I'll put that link into the show notes as well. And thank you very much for giving that offer to our listeners. MC, thank you very much for joining us, and have a wonderful day.
Thank you so much for having me.
Hey, thanks for joining us for another episode of the Money Seed Podcast. Please remember to click like and subscribe. It really helps spread the message to other investors, and it helps attract new viewers to the show. We appreciate your support. Thanks very much.